Assalamu alaikum fam, hope you're doing well. So we're continuing our reading of Niccolo Machiavelli, chapter 7, on new principalities acquired by the arms of others and by fortune. Let's begin. Quite nerdy. Now he gave us lots of examples of Darius in Greece, the cities of Ionia and Hellespont, and remember he talked about intelligence and ability, which is known as virtue. So, let's begin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay. Alexander VI, in wishing to raise up his son, the Duke, had many difficulties, both present and future. First, he saw no way of making him the master of any state that was not a possession of the church. Okay. So I wonder if he did that because he's like, my son's an incompetent bimbo, or it needs to have the backup of the armies of the church. And if he attempted to do anything for him that belonged to the church, he knew the Duke of Milan and the Venetians would not consent to it because Faenza and Rimini were already under the protection of the Venetians. Okay, so we have figure named Faenza, Faenza, and Rimini, Rimini. So the Duke of Milan and the Venetians were already under the protection of the Venetians. He saw, beyond this, that the armies of Italy, and especially of the rulers, whom he might have been able to use, were in the hands of the people, who had reason to fear the Pope's power. Okay. Reason to fear the Pope's power. So here you see a cool contrast, because it's like back then, the Pope had a little bit more of, hey, what's going on? Today, people are like, you freaking heretic Pope. It's quite different. And therefore, he could not depend on them, since they all belonged to the Orsini and Colonna families and their confederates. So here, what are we getting at? The Orsini, Orsini, and then the Colonna, Collonna, and their confederates. So they have their backings. Remember, in the 16th and 17th centuries, even 15th, these are families that are powerful in their merchant networks. A real aristocracy, right? The nobles. They got some cash, they have land, they have estates, and they employ many people, and they have these interesting city-state alliances. It's not the Italy that we know today. It was, therefore, necessary to disturb the existing order. Now, notice this. Necessary to disturb the existing order. To cause that shift. How are you going to bring in something new? Have to take out the old. And to unsettle those states, in order to make himself the secure master of some of them. So what is he saying? Go in, disturb it up, come in, and secure it. But he can only secure it through unsettling it and shifting the order. Very interesting. This was easy for him to do, for he found that the Venetians, driven by other motives, intended to have the French come back into Italy. So look at that. The Venetians seemed to have this sort of open door for the French. Something he not only did not oppose, but made easier by dissolving the first marriage of King Louis. So here, it's like the politics is like around a woman's, body. It's quite strange. Marriage is this sort of alliance of like, we're not going to invade you because my son is porking your wife, or like, my son is going to do this, my son is going to do that. It's just strange. Like, you got to wonder, they did this swapping, like divorcing, you marry her. It's just like very weird type of this weird existence. I don't know. It just seems strange that, like, Cato once said in politics being driven by the swapping of women. Yeah, he said something like that. It's like, this guy has his wife, they divorce, she marries another guy, and that's like, you're sleeping with my wife, and we're all interbred. It's like, what is going on here? So you have these powerful families, and then the fate of soldiers is depending upon if a man gets bored with his wife or if she's hot enough to get the guy. I mean, it's such an insane way to rule when you think about it. Thus, the king came into Italy with the aid of the Venetians and the consent of Alexander. And no sooner was he in Milan than the Pope obtained troops for him for the campaign in Romagna. So look at that. The Pope is a warrior. The Catholic Church wasn't just like hippy-dippy, let's all put soy in each other's mouth. Troops granted to him because of the reputation of the king. So, got some troops because of reputation, look at that. Having then acquired Romagna and defeated the Colonna, so the Colonna are defeated now, he's got some new territory and defeated some enemies. The Duke, wishing to hold on to that province and to advance further, was hindered by two things. First, his troops, who did not seem loyal to him. Now this is interesting. He got some land. Now he wants to keep going. He wants to conquer a bit more. Get some of that glory. But his troops, they're not that loyal. Remember when we were digging into Suetonius' Life of the Caesars, he was getting into Gaius Julius Caesar, and how the troops were very loyal to Caesar. They got land, they got all kinds of goodies. This very strong love that is based upon valor and materialism, but still potent. Here, though, you see, if you don't have the loyalty of your troops, well, you're going to be in trouble. So how do you increase loyalty in troops is the question. Second, the will of France, that is, he feared that the troops of the Orsini, whom he had been using, would fail him and not only keep him from acquiring more territory, but to take from him what he had already acquired. So here, the troops of the Orsini, he don't really have too much confidence in them. That he feels that they're going to block him. They might do something and make him even lose what he's gained. That's not a good feeling. And he also feared that the king would do the same thing to him. I mean, well, that's the objective, right? He had a confirmation of this from the Orsini when, after the storming of Faenza, he assaulted Bologna and observed how coldly they acted in the assault. Wow, how coldly they acted. So we have Romagna, he went there, got that, and now he's attacked Bologna. I mean, Italy, man, just had so much drama that we don't even think about today. And as for the king, the Duke perceived his intentions when, after he had taken the Duchy of Urbino, he attacked Tuscany. This is crazy. Like, you got the Orsini, the Colonna, Duchy of Urbino, the storming of Faenza, Tuscany's been attacked, Bologna's been attacked. I mean, this is trippy, because when we see Italians today, they're all just a bunch of fashion models or guys with really hairy chests sitting on the beach eating calamari, you know? It's so different, you know? It's like the wars and battle-tested people, man, is constantly under attack. It's just so interesting how soft the men are today there, with their fancy pants and skinny jeans and shiny pointy shoes and hair gel and bathing in cologne. You know, here it's like, it was just constant, you know, problems, and then worrying about France coming in. Really quite fascinating how, you know, masculinity, warrior culture, honor culture, strength, virtue changes. It's really quite interesting because we're seeing through the lens of Machiavelli's mind in this time period. It's pretty cool. And the king made him desist from that enterprise. See how he says desist from the enterprise. So it's something to get gained there. Some financial, you know, it's not just a goal, but it's an enterprise. As a result, the Duke decided to depend no longer on the arms of fortune of others. And first of all, he weakened the Orsini and Colonna factions in Rome by winning over all their followers who were noblemen. So here, what do you see? You have some opponents. There's these factions, right? Again, something taking place in Rome, I swear. It's like ancient Rome was just like something. Italy's got something there, man. It's just so much history going on over there. Get those noblemen on your side, take away your enemy's support. So let's see how if he tells us how he won them over. Making them his own noblemen and giving them large stipends. Okay, yeah. So large stipends. So he gave them some good money and also gave them position. So he baited them. Obviously, it must have been a more noble position or more finance or a bit of both, because if they left the Orsini and the Colonna factions, they must have been like, well, there's a better opportunity here for us if we switch sides. So treacherous, isn't it? Just so treacherous. And he honored them with military commands and offices. So here, they got a whole bunch of goodies, according to their rank, so that in a few months their affection for their factions was extinguished in their hearts and was entirely directed towards the Duke. So, wow. Dang, man. So giving them a bunch of incentives to switch their affections. It appeared it worked. I mean, you gotta give him something. So he used there's the fear method and, the financial method. So he used, instead of saying, I'll decapitate you all or something, he used the financial aims and titles. After this, he waited for an opportunity to wipe out the Orsini, having already scattered those who belonged to the House of Colonna. So he's destroyed the House of Colonna at this point. Now he wants to take on the Orsini. And when a good opportunity arrived, he made even better use of it. For when the Orsini realized, too late, that the greatness of the Duke and of the Church meant their ruin, they arranged a meeting at Magnon, in the territory of Perugia. From this resulted the rebellion of Urbino and tumults in the Romagna and countless dangers for the Duke. So here, the territory of Perugia, so Perugia, notice this, the greatness of the Duke and of the Church. So the Church got some military might going on in this day, where people feared it. So you rebel, you're going to be in trouble. Wow. So Orsini, he didn't really read the room very well, but he kind of sounds like he wants to go down with the ship. He knows that, hey, there's somebody who wants to wipe out your family, your house. Whew, and he's facing the Duke and the Church. I mean, this is interesting. There were people of Orsini, right, that family, saw the Colonna get destroyed, and they know they're next on the list. Wow, just so much rebellions. So this says here, the rebellion in Urbino. So notice how, when we were reading so these are little mini kind of city-states. Just notice how, these constant frequent rebellions, it almost reminds me of what, the founding fathers were talking about when they said, how confederacies don't really work. Because you see these confederacies going on and they switch sides more easily because they're not bound by a certain thing. They're all separate and have their own aims and agendas, and they're not unified under one banner, and look how they're all fighting. You can kind of see that. They're factions based upon something more selfish and narrow than a bigger, broader cause. Kind of shows you a lot about Italian history, but also European history and politics in general. All of which he overcame with the aid of the French, and when his reputation had been restored, placing no trust either in France or in other outside forces. So notice this. Not trusting outside foreign forces. Really kind of look into the more local area. In order not to have to run to the risk of testing them, he turned to deceit, and he now knew how to dissemble his intentions so well that the Orsini were reconciled with him through the mediation of Signor Paolo. Okay, so this is also a popular name. Signor Paolo, whom the Duke did not fail to use every sort of courtesy to reassure. So courtesy to reassure. It almost sounds like what Hobbes was saying is if you honor somebody, they can give you this loyalty. It's like you have to kind of show this chivalry. Well, chivalry is for women, but this sort of gentlemanness, this sort of giving them these benefits to kind of coax them into liking you, giving him money, clothing, and horses, so showering him with gifts, kind of softening him up. Wow. So that their simple-mindedness led them to Signalia and into his hands. So he's saying their simple-mindedness, they didn't perceive the underlying aim here. Having thus eliminated these leaders and turned their partisans into his friends, the Duke had laid down very good foundations for his power. So the foundations of really softening up people through lavishing with them gifts and stuff, taking out the House of Colonna, trying to bend Orsini to his will, using the mediation of Signor Paolo. Wow, this is very interesting. Since he held all the Romagna, as well as the Duchy of Urbino, so now he's got some land there. And most important, it appeared to him that he had acquired the Romagna as his friend, having won over all those people from the moment they began to taste the benefit of his rule. So notice this, taste the benefit of his rule. Remember, how he said, you need to kind of get the people on your side. You need to show them that you're the better option. So it gets into that love and fear aspect. Reward the people, show them that there's a benefit to you being in power, and they won't invite the usurper in as much. Very interesting. So we've seen quite a lot. The storming of Faenza, the assault on Bologna, the Duchy of Urbino, we have the attack on Tuscany. I mean, so much drama going on in Italy at this time. Whew. It's really interesting. He just dropped so many examples for us. It's really interesting. So Alexander VI wishing to raise up his son. Wow. Just amazing. So again, also the Rimini, they were under the protection of the Venetians. So you just have these different families and these different territories just going at it, these different factions. And the church playing a huge role in that. You know, the history of Christianity in Italy is really just, you can't separate them from each other. It really shows you a lot. The church was involved in these affairs, and the people were in the middle of it. You almost can't separate it. So it's very interesting to examine the history of religion and the history of nations and how religions played a role in that. You know, I'm sure many of them, highly religious people, praying to God, and their soldiers, their troops and such, praying to God as well, trying to be victorious, feeling that God was on their side as they take on their enemies. Very interesting. What do you think?